Good morning and welcome to Changing the World with God and with Good, where for about 5 or 10 minutes I get to share with you God's will for humanity, get to share God with you in a non-biased way, without religious bias, without ethnic bias, without national bias, without gender bias or political bias, but just sharing with you universal truths about God the Creator and His will for humanity. And for the last couple of days I've talked about the mustard seed, talked about how there's growth in that seed even when it's underground, and vegetation hadn't began to sprout yet. And although we can't see that there's things going on with our or through our physical eyes, that growth is still taking place. I talked also about yesterday in the process that the seed must go through from being a seed to germinating and becoming produce or harvest. And today I want to pick up, but yet talk from a different perspective from the first 2 days and talk about the faith of a mustard seed. We have read in the Bible that, if we would only have the faith of a mustard seed, we could tell the mountain to be thou removed, and it would be removed and cast into the sea. And I want to talk to you this morning about the mustard seed, the faith of a mustard seed. The faith of a mustard seed. And the Bible, as I say, encourages us to have faith of a mustard seed. And I want you to notice a few things about that mustard seed so that you will better understand what it means to have mustard seed type of faith. I want to share this with you so that in your day-to-day activities, when things come about and God is still expecting you to rise above those things, you will be able to stand in faith knowing that God is God and that God is able to do all things according to His power, according to His might, and according to who He is. And the first thing I want you to understand about having the faith of a mustard seed or mustard seed type faith is that that mustard seed understands that it was created for to be and to produce something specific. I mean, it knows that it makes no sense to try to be something that is not. That mustard seed understands that God created it uniquely. He didn't create the mustard seed to replicate the seed of a melon or the seed of some other type of vegetable. He created it unique to represent His creation, and He had created it a mustard seed. And this is important because so many of us struggle in life. So many of us deal with untold frustration. So many of us deal with failure on top of failure because we're not like that mustard seed in realizing that God created us to be and to produce something specific. You see, a lot of us think that we don't have because we're lacking in faith. But like that mustard seed, I want to tell you that that mustard seed could have all the faith in the world, that it could replicate a melon, that it could, produce watermelons. But how many of you know that all the faith in the world won't make a mustard seed produce and become a watermelon? It wasn't created for that. It wasn't designed for that. And I'm here to tell you, beloved, that God has created you uniquely so that you be something specific and so that you produce something specific. He didn't create you a person that should try to live his life as a monkey. It's frugal. And so many of us are frustrated because we hadn't figured out exactly what God created us for, what he calls us to produce. And we're all over the place. The first thing about that mustard seed, and as it relates to faith, it recognizes that it was created to be something specific and to do something specific according to God's design, according to God's plan, according to God's purpose. This is important. This is important. This is important. This is vitally important that you recognize that you're not your friend, that you're not your mother, that you're not your father, that you're not your preacher, that you are unique. And in your uniqueness, you have to understand that God created you to be you, to figure out what he created you for, to produce and to become what he created for you to become. Secondly, what I want you to know about the mustard seed and the faith of a mustard seed is that that mustard seed recognizes before it starts its germination process that it's going to have to go through some stuff. It's not deceived into thinking that just because it makes a confession of faith that all of a sudden the process isn't the process. It's not deceived into thinking that just because I self-identify using the human labels of Christian, Muslim, Jew, Palestinian, Black, White, American, that the process is not going to be the process. The mustard seed understands that if I'm going to become what God has created for me to become, I am going to have to go through some stuff. I'm going to have to go through a process. It knows that is going to be buried under dirt. It knows that people are going to throw dirt at it, throw dirt on it. It already knows it, so it's not deceived. It's not moved when these things happen. It knows that it's going to be stepped on. Yes. And see, I'm here, beloved, to tell you that you may as well just know in your, if we're talking about mustard seed type faith and not being moved when things happen against you, you got to recognize, like that mustard seed, that people are going to throw dirt at you. They're going to step on you. That sometimes you're going to feel as if you are submerged under water, like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and you can barely keep your head above water. Sometimes, beloved, you've got to be like that mustard seed and already know that things are going to happen. You've got to know that, yes, you're going to have to fight for what you believe belongs to you. Yes, don't be deceived into thinking that things are just going to come to you and you're not going to have to do anything for it. No, that mustard seed understands that it can't just sit in a glass jar and think that it can become what God has created it to be. It knows that it has to go through a difficult, sometimes tedious process. It has to be buried. It has to be stepped on. It has to find itself submerged underwater. It has to fight against other elements and other entities that's trying to take what belongs to it. It recognizes, even after all this, that it has to be cracked open, exposing itself to the different changing conditions of society, all to become what God created it to be, to produce what God created it to produce. And beloved, I'm just here to tell you that you got to be like that mustard seed. You got to know that these things are going to happen to you so that you are prepared, so that you don't lose your way when you find yourself in difficult situations, so that you don't lose your mind when you have those that you thought were on your team turn their backs on you. You've got to be like that mustard seed. No, and what I want you to understand about the mustard seed is that it knows these things are going to happen. but it has absolutely no idea when they're going to happen. The mustard seed don't know when the farmer is going to decide to plant it. It doesn't know when God is going to decide to send water from heaven. It doesn't know when the earth is going to provide nutrients for it. It knows that, I've just got to be determined to go through the process. I've got to make up my mind that whatever happens, whatever comes, whatever goes, that I am committed to the process. I'm going to get to the end. That mustard seed has absolutely no idea how and when it's going to be plucked out of the earth, but yet it is determined to go through the process. It's determined to get to the end. It's determined because it knows that the only way that it can become and produce what God has created it to become and to produce is that it goes through the process. Are you willing to go through the process? Will you have the faith to know that if it come against me, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, and I'm going on anyway? Do you have the faith to look at adversity and say, okay, bring it on? Because God has equipped me with the wings of eagles, and I can just soar over it. Have you determined that? Have you made up your mind? Because faith, all that is determination. When you are decided that, no matter what comes, no matter what goes, that I am committed to the process. I believe in spite of what I see, in spite of what I'm going through, in spite of being buried, in spite of being stepped on, in spite of having what was supposed to be mine taken away, in spite of feeling like I'm underwater, in spite of being taken advantage of, in spite of losing and having my life cracked open and exposed, I am committed to the process. I am running on to see what the end is going to be, realizing that God's word will never come back to him void, but that it will accomplish its purpose and cause me to prosper. Is that you this morning, beloved? Have you made up in your mind that you're going to run on anyway? Have you made up in your mind that I don't care how many friends turn their backs on me, I don't care how many jobs I lose, I don't care how many businesses go belly up, I don't care how many people walk out on me and walk out of my life, that I am determined, I am committed, I have made up my mind that I'm going to become and do and to produce what God has created me to become, to produce and to do. Is that you this morning? Beloved, and the last thing I want to tell you about that mustard seed as it relates to faith is that mustard seed understands that it's got to do something to become something. Yes. Don't be deceived into thinking that you don't have to do anything and that God is just going to pour it in your lap. Beloved, I'm here to tell you that if you want something, you got to get out and get something. That mustard seed don't just sit there in the jar. That mustard seed don't just lie dormant in the dirt. That mustard seed begins a journeyous process. That mustard seed begins to move and to sprout itself, taking what belongs to it, moving about according to the process of God. It recognizes that it has to go through, it has to do something, it has to get out and do something to become what God has created it to be. It recognizes that if it does nothing, it can't become anything except a whole lot of unfulfilled potential. Is that you this morning, beloved? You are filled with potential. You are filled with faith, but you're not moving. You're not moving. You talk about it, but you don't be about it. Is that you this morning? I'm talking to somebody, beloved, that recognizes, that's talked about the faith, a mustard seed type of faith, but you got to recognize that the final process in this faith walk is to get up and to do what it requires to go through the process so that you can become what God has created you to do and to become and to produce what he's created you to produce. I want you to recognize that, beloved, if you want it, you got to get out and get it. Recognizing now that God is going to do his part. Yeah, he's going to do his part. It's just incumbent upon us to do our part. We got to believe it. We got to be determined about doing the work. We've got to be committed. You know, the definition of decision is to cut off all other options. We've got to become committed. We've got to know who we are, what God created us for. Recognize that we're going to have to go through some things to get there. That's not necessarily going to be an easy journey. We've got to be committed to the process. We've got to work the process. Even when the process becomes difficult, like the mustard seed, we've got to be determined to go through with a made-up mind that I will run the race, that I might win the race, that I might win the prize of hearing God say unto me, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have fought the good fight. You have finished the race and you have kept the faith. Welcome home. Is that your type of faith this morning? I'm talking to somebody, and I'm not talking at you, and I'm not talking down. I'm encouraging you to really exemplify mustard seed type of faith this morning. Because it's there for you. God has created it for you. We're saying now just recognize the process. When they don't see that growth is going, you continue to grow on. Recognize that you've got to go through the process and that the process can be a difficult one. But go through the process with a made-up mind that if they leave me, I'm still going on. If they lie on me, I'm still going on. If they cheat me, I'm still going on. If they turn their backs on me, I'm still going on. If I've got to go alone, I am committed because I know God didn't bring me this far to leave me. Yes, I am his seed, and he created me to be and to produce what he created me to be and to produce. I love you, beloved. I thank you for tuning in, and until next time, goodbye.